Hello, I'm Scott Bogey here with Jarrod St Jean ahead of his Cage Titans 72 fight against Aaron Hughes. How are you doing today? And how are you feeling ahead of this upcoming fight?
Good. We're about 3 weeks out, so my body's just about in shape. You know, um, a lot of the hard work I'd like to say is just still we're still kind of ramping up to get to peak performance. Probably have like 2 more hard weeks, and then we'll taper back that last week for the weight cut. But yeah, I'm feeling great. I'm feeling more than ready.
And like you're saying, you've just got to tweak one or two wee things ahead of this upcoming fight. What is it about Aaron that you see as being the main key for victory?
For myself, just making sure I'm staying disciplined in my hands, being better with my head movement compared to my last fight. Got clipped one too many times, got cut. I don't really plan on getting cut this time, so just staying active with my hands. My defense is solid, and doing everything I know I can do.
And like you said, you did get clipped in your last fight. However, you're still able to walk out with the unanimous decision victory. How did you feel like that fight went?
I felt good. It was a real tough challenge for me, a good mental push as well to see how far I'm willing to go. And it was very good for myself, I guess, like, in a soul searching sense
Yeah.
of like how this game progresses and what I can do. So it felt really good to do that, to go the distance and see what I'm capable of, and having that experience early in my career, I feel like is very beneficial for me and boosting my confidence for anyone I fight in the future.
I feel like some people can just look at your opponent's record, 7-8 in your last fight, 4-8 in this fight, and they just be like, "Oh, you're just fighting some guy with a losing record." However, it is that experience that they take into these fights which helps you develop even just earlier on.
Absolutely, yeah. Going against these tough guys that have all this experience is certainly a plus for me to, and I guess and for them. They've got the ton of experience, fighting and getting comfortable in that, firefight, or just getting in that comfort level in the ring. That's a lot of people. It struggles for a lot of people, and I feel like with my amateur career having 7 fights, it certainly helped me. But now I'm really just a small fish in a big pond, so I'm really jumping into the deep end with these guys with over double my amount of fights. So it's very good.
And you made your professional debut this year. You then that was back in February. You then got another fight in May. You're taking this fight in July. What's next for you for the rest of this year? Are you just wanting a wee bit break, or are you wanting to stay as active as you have been?
I want one more fight, hopefully in October, and then maybe try. I'll take the rest of the year off, still continuing to train, get better.
Yeah.
But I'm really shooting for 4 fights this year, trying to hit the pro scene kind of hard, and then maybe tapering back a little bit next year, maybe 3 fights, enjoying a little bit of my time off as I'll be taking a little bit more serious fights, being ideally 4-0.
And it was announced like a couple of weeks ago that the Contender Series is getting double the amount of fights. I'm not sure if it's starting from this series or if it's next. For a fighter, does that make you more optimistic about your chances of being able to get on there? Maybe not next year, but the year after that.
Getting on what? You
The
believe that
Contender
they said
Series.
it can in the contender series? Um, I don't really. I guess I wouldn't really look too far ahead, to be honest. I'm like at least goal wise. I mean, for everyone, I like to think their goal is to get to the
Yeah.
UFC. Right now, I don't see myself kind of like going as I don't know. I don't see myself right there yet. I just want to take each fight kind of day by day. You know, get the name. Fight them, win. Train. I just want to see myself progressively getting better first. I'll take the fights as they come. Wins or potentially losses, but um, if I get the call, I get the call, but I don't really see myself anywhere in that picture just yet. So it's good to have goals, but like I'm just trying to keep myself a little bit grounded at the moment.
And you didn't have that much of an amateur career. I know you went like 5-2. Did you feel like you were just ready after you were able to clinch that lightweight title with combat?
Yeah, I felt like I had just switched gyms, so that was my third fight with them, and they had already numerous professional fighters. And originally my plan, I never even wanted to go pro. I never really saw myself going professional. I just wanted to get a couple titles, and then I was like, okay, I'm doing really, really well, and I'm surrounded by a good support group. where I feel like I could make a run at this and I could see how far I can go. So from that Combat FC title win, I was like, I don't really see anybody else for me at 155 to fight, and I felt like it was a good chance for me to go pro, and I wanted to hit it hard and see. It's a young man's sport, so I wanted to see how far I could take this.
And like you said, you had the right people around you. How crucial is that to be able to find that gym, have that team that is not just going to get you there, but be able to get you there on the right course?
It's very important. I have a great support system, training partners, coaches. They're all super high level, and they've been helping me grow ever since. I've at the time I had 3 fights with them, and I was already surrounded by killers. When I first started cross training with them, I was getting my ass kicked every single day for like a month and a half, 2 months. And I just kept on taking the beatings, but kept on showing up. So it was a blessing. And I haven't turned back, and it's been two years with them. So. I love every day of it.
And you don't just train at the gym. When you come home and I know you're roommates, but I think you were at least with Kyle Paval. How great is it being able to not just be able to be buddies in the gym, but being buddies outside and be able to live with them as well?
It's awesome. We get to like bounce ideas off each other all the time, talk about fighting, talk about opponents and stuff like that, matchups, and what's gonna happen for the both of us in our careers, and like what steps we're gonna take in our journey. So it's super cool being able to live with Kyle Fall and having a roommate, well, along with the same goals, the same dream, to get to the UFC. So it's awesome to live together.
And I remember seeing, I think it was for your last fight, video of you during your weight cut, and it just looked like you're just having it in ease. You're in the hot tub, you're having that wee jiggle. How much weight do you actually cut?
Um, I guess in water, it's not too much. I'd like to think I'm a lighter 55er, so I only cut like 14, 15, anywhere from like 14 to 16 pounds. I mean, I don't really know if that's a lot or a little, but I'd like to think for my weight class, that's like a decent amount. It's like 8 to 9% of my body weight in water, or like 7 to 9% of my body weight in water. But it's for me, it doesn't feel like it's too much. I've graduated in college from uh, nutritional science degree. So I'd like to think I use that to help me cut weight a decent amount, and it helps. I feel like it goes hand in hand with what I'm doing in this sport. So
So I'm guessing because, like you say, you got that degree, you don't need a nutritionist. You just do this yourself. You know what you need to be able to get down to the weight.
yeah, I feel like I've got my diet pretty dialed in. There's always things I could be doing better with other sciencey sort of
Yeah.
things, and getting things really dialed in if I had like the tools to use it. But Um, I guess there's always more to be done, but I like to think from like an outside sort of standpoint, I feel like I have my diet pretty locked in.
How important was you to be able to finish that degree and be able to get that as well as then obviously got your fighting career as well?
It was pretty important. My parents wanted me to help go to college and help me try to like pursue a higher education, and I never really thought about it as much. I wasn't taking, I was still an amateur at the time, so I was like, okay, I'll just do it. And I guess it was another, I guess, a blessing that I got it, and then I was decided to turn pro, and I was just like, okay, I'll just use this for myself. So it worked out pretty well for me. And if by the time my fighting career does taper back, or if I do decide to retire, which wouldn't be anytime soon, I could always use my college degree later on.
And are you being able to do this full time, or are you kind of working at the side as well?
I am a full-time fighter. Yes.
And how is that to be able to spend their whole dedication on the fight game? You don't really have to worry about being able to juggle time about.
It's awesome. I get to really focus on what I need to do to progress. Doing numerous classes a day and whatnot, working on my jujitsu, wrestling, striking, Muay Thai, every aspect of like my game in like separate aspects. Like different styles.
Yeah.
To help build each individual aspect of my game. I feel like it's very important for myself, and it helps me progress that much faster. And I feel like that's one of the major keys that have helped me succeed in these past 2 years with Nostos.
And have you gone anywhere like abroad to try and train like Thailand or that?
No, no.
Would that be on your bucket list, or do you feel like you're in the States, you've got Extreme Couture, you've got these elite gyms as well. You don't really need to venture out.
Yeah, I've thought about it, maybe like a little bit. Maybe not for like a full camp, but like maybe for like if I'm not um
Yeah, just
I
like
suppose if I'm
between.
not in camp, just kind of like cross training a little bit. I suppose if I climb the a little bit higher in the local ranks, I can see myself kind of like traveling out a little bit, trying to get some cross work in. It's definitely on the table for sure, especially as the game is so advanced these days. I could definitely see myself doing that.
I
Absolutely.
I know you're now training at, I think it's Nostos MMA, is that correct?
Hmm. Yes,
And
no Stones in Summersworth.
what was it that made you, like you said, you just changed gyms near your end of your amateur career? What was it that made you move over to them?
I was on a two fight split decision loss at my old gym at Spiro's, and I was like, man, I'm doing everything I can here. Something had to change, and I wanted to get back. I was obsessed with winning, so I ended up meeting Nathaniel Grimard at another gym, and he told me to come to Nostos, and I did. So I kept on cross training at Nostos. They had a bunch of professional fighters run by a former UFC fighter, former Bellator fighter, Devin Powell, and he's kind of built this gym up from I'd say from the ground up, but there's a lot of history with the Nostos. So he built the gym up from the ground up, and he's got a bunch of coaches helping him and helping run the gym. So
And
yeah,
how has it been able to lean into his experience as a fighter? Because obviously, like you're saying, he's the former UFC, former Bellator. He has got that experience of being able to be in the big organizations.
he I believe because it was right around the time when he was retiring was right around the time I believe I joined, or he'd already retired. Um, and he was from everything he's kind of given us, I suppose, as in the because he runs a lot of MMA practices. He's always like hard on us, trying to push us to be better. Every single day, trying to push us to, do as many classes as possible. And I feel that was something he probably did in his career. Training nonstop, constantly training as hard as he possibly could, and he wants that for his fighters, for his gym. And I can feel that energy. I feel like a lot of fighters do when he's coaching and any aspects out of jiu-jitsu, MMA. I'd say predominantly MMA because he's really pushing us hard. Um, but we can kind of feel that energy as he wants us all to progress and be better in fighting and whatever we want to do with that.
And are you just fully concentrating on MMA, or if between fights, like a grappling competition or BJJ competition comes up, would you take that, or are you just solely just fights?
I would. So that actually kind of happened. It was early in the. I forget what camp it was, but I was about to start a camp for one of my fights, and Devin asked us to do a bunch of the fighters a jiu-jitsu competition, and I had not. I really wasn't experienced or doing a whole ton of jiu-jitsu competitions at the time, and I didn't really like them when I was younger. So he told us to do one as we would get more experience with just the jiu-jitsu side of things, and he thought it would be more beneficial for us to do that instead of like sparring on a Saturday. So we ended up doing it. I ended up doing a jiu-jitsu competition in last year. I think it was like November-ish, and I ended up winning gold after moving up from the purple belt division to they wanted us to move up from to the purple belt to brown and black belt, and I won gold, which it felt pretty cool. I learned a lot, but he does want us to do jiu-jitsu competitions more, and I do want to do them more in my opinion. I just don't want to do them when I'm in camp because I
Yeah,
just risk of injury. People are willing to rip on your legs and stuff, so I don't really want to deal with that when I'm in camp. But I'm willing to 100% do more jiu-jitsu competitions and just focus on jiu-jitsu if I was preparing for one.
exactly. And what do you feel like has been the best fight of your career, as maybe not even just like the best finish, but you took the most from it?
I feel like I took a lot from the Combat FC title along with my last fight from Tobias Taylor. The I'll start with the my Amy title. I was fighting
Gonzalez.
Jojo Gonzalez. Yeah, I forgot because Instagram is Joel. So Jojo Gonzalez. He was, I forget what division, but it was like D1, D2. All American wrestler where he had a great pedigree in wrestling. So I was going, and yeah, especially since he was an undefeated fighter at the time. So that one was very hard mental push for myself. Um, I was going against an undefeated guy. He had never lost. And I felt confident all the way up till I was waking up that morning. I was like, dang, he's really undefeated. So I was like, I really got to go fight this guy. And he manhandled me for like 2 rounds. It was bad. Just I couldn't get up the whole time. Third round, it was like, all right, I got to turn this around now. So I felt like a little bit of his strength was fading a little bit. And after I had hurt him, I feel like before he shot, I knew I had to get up immediately. So I couldn't sit on the ground anymore. So that one felt good. Um, the Tobias Taylor one, like I said earlier, really pushed me to be better.
Yeah.
Really made me dig deep within myself to figure out that I really want to do this and I have the skills to do it. That one was a very good mental push for myself for me to dog that out, get the win, and I guess I had lost my 100% finish rate, but I got my first decision win.
Yeah.
So for me, that was a little bit of a moral victory as an amateur where I would only lose decisions. It felt good inside to get that win, and come back from it stronger. So those two, I'd suppose, were probably like my favorite
And,
ones.
and I feel like with the Tobias Taylor one, some people get a few fights in and then they get the tough fight and they may get a bit exposed because they don't really know how to handle that situation. You got that earlier on and you handled it and you got a win. Do you feel like that's just going to help you later on in your career as well?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Having that tough fight so early, maybe it wasn't the smartest fight because he had so much experience. I just really wanted to get on that card. It was about 4 weeks out. They gave us his name, and I was like, sure, I'll do it. I really wanted to get on that card to hopefully fight again for Combat FC, which was in this past June, earlier this month.
Yeah.
And it didn't end up happening because I ended up fighting someone with so much experience that it just didn't work out. So it was good to fight him early in my career, and I feel like it's only going to help my confidence boost significantly from that fight.
And with Cage Titans, they are starting to be on the rise. I know Jake Condon, he's just on the Contender Series, so they are getting that rise. How big do you feel like that's going to be for the organization as a whole?
I think it's really good. I think they've had one or two couple guys from there fight for
Yeah,
the UFC. They've got Chris Moutinho, they've had Connor Matthews who fought for Cage Titans. They had someone else recently who just fought and lost in the UFC. I forget his name. I can't think of him all of a sudden, but it's good to see local guys finally get their shot. But the goal, unfortunately, especially Mitch Raposo as well. He's made his splash to the UFC. It just it kind of sucks that we see a lot of these local guys. They get their shot and then unfortunately they fall short a little bit. So that's why I feel like I see myself. I don't want to put myself up there just yet. I want to be able to fight the hardest competition I can at the local scene to prepare myself for that higher level. I don't want to go up to the higher level and lose on the highest stage possible. So I want to see myself fight the toughest competition I can at the local scene, knowing I am ready for the next step.
and I feel like that's what some managers they kind of like protect their athletes. I know one or two managers here in the UK scene. They are they're not wanting to give these guys the tough fights just now. They just want to protect their record going to try and get that UFC. However, that is where the error comes because they get to the UFC, they get these tough guys, and they don't know how to handle it. Do you feel like that kind of perspective needs to change? And you need to have these tough fights as you are developing.
100%. I feel like with a lot of these guys, like you're saying, they're protecting the records and stuff, getting them these, I don't want to say easier fights, but like giving them these different, just not the hardest competition
Yeah,
possible when they should be, because they're not getting a real test. They're not getting a real, it's like kind of like half studying for the exam. And then when you get the exam, you're going to fail.
yeah.
So it's a different outlook on it. And it's not good for the sport. I guess it's also not good for like the local scene for New England. I feel like it's just only going to hurt us in the long run for us, Nostos to get our shot or other New England fighters to get their shot to the UFC because they just keep getting these chances, and they come up short. So I just feel like it's just going to make it harder for us in the long run, where you just got to take these harder fights and make yourself, I suppose, undeniable.
And how is like the New England scene? Because I know you've got Cage Titans just now, you've got Cage Fury FC. They come and just help. How is the New England scene for being able to find fights?
So I like to. Well, they have like five promotions around here. They have NEF, Combat FC, Combat Zone, Cage Titans. I want to say there's one more, but I'm drawing a blank on it. But there's a bunch of them in the local scene here. I like to think a lot of them are pretty good. I've most predominantly fought at Combat FC with Joe and Rick, Joe Cav and Rick. Oh my God, I forgot his last name. Sorry, Rick. But I've fought for them, and they've got the ties with Dana White and the UFC Fight Pass. So
Yeah.
it's super cool to fight for them. I like the idea of stepping out to Cage Titans a little bit. getting my name out there. They have a big, huge following on social media, so I think that's gonna be good for me and my brand. Trying to progress as a fighter and just fighting different areas, trying to grow my fan base a little bit. So I like to think we have a plenty of outlets to fight at for like local, small time fighters like myself. So we have, 5+ promotions around here. Um, but for myself, it's good to branch out a little bit. So I feel like I'm doing that more and more as my pro career. As, since I've only fought for Combat FC and NEF once as an amateur, I feel like it's good to, expand a little bit as a professional.
And like you said, they do have the UFC Fight Pass help supporting them. How big is that for you guys as fighters, being able to have that to be able to expand your horizon?
I think it's pretty good. I can always rely on them to, fight for them, and they would always, would be willing to throw me on Fight Pass and stuff. So I think it's really cool. Potentially get my name out there even further to the broader spectrum of fighters and eyes on myself. I always think that's going to be good for me, good for myself. People to see for people to see an exciting fight. So I'm always looking forward to that, especially in 2026, where I feel like I'd be taking harder fights for whichever promotion it would be. But I would certainly see myself taking much harder fights next year.
And is that kind of like the goal is you take this fight, you get a win, you probably take another fight in October, like you're saying, and then 2026, you're looking for these tough matchups, you're looking for those titles in the regional scene. Is that kind of what you're wanting to do as your development path?
Yeah, I see that for myself right now. And even if I don't even get a title next year or early next year, I'll be taking certainly a tougher fight to get me even ready for the title. Like I don't want to take I don't want to jump right into a title, which would be a challenge. I would rather take like a hard fight for no title and then, jump into a title. But I'll take whatever's given to me, and I'll just roll with the punches. So I'll take what I can get.
Well, that sounds great. And do you have any like celebratory traditions? Like after you get the win, you go out, go to a certain restaurant, you go. Is there anything like that you like to do, or
I mean, usually immediately right after the fight, we usually just drink a good amount, eating super strict the whole time and not really, I guess most, I'd say 100%, staying away from alcohol and stuff, doing everything we should be for our bodies.
yeah?
I like to think I drink a decent amount depending on how tired or how beat up I am. But um, for I guess the last couple celebratory traditions, I suppose, would be like just eating a bunch of cheese balls. My dad would always bring me like a tub of cheese balls or whatever, and I just kind of munch on those the whole time. But that would, I suppose, is a pretty solid staple in my post fight routine.
And I think everyone thinks after you do the weight cut, you're just dying for food. However, you've lost that much. You just take one or two bites and then you just can't eat anymore.
Yes, it's awful. It makes you feel it makes me feel awful on the inside. I go to like uh any sort of like steakhouse restaurant, I'm eating a ton of like the bread or whatever, and I'll just get like the smallest steak possible. It's like if the food finally comes out and you can't eat it all, and you just feel awful on the inside. So it's certainly a challenge, and it's something people I feel like wouldn't really expect to happen. But um, since I've been doing it for so long, it's kind of just part of the game.
Well, make sure you guys tune in to Cage Titan 72 and you can see Jarrod get the knockout finish and be able to move up to 3-0. Thank you for coming on. Is there anything you want to add or anyone you want to shout out?
I like shout out Cage Titans. Thank you for getting me on this card. I'll be fighting with my younger brother Tyler St Jean, so that's gonna be cool. He's gonna be making his amateur debut, and I'll be making my professional Cage Titans debut. So two great fights, two St Jeans gonna be throwing it down. My team, Nostos MMA, a lot of my sponsors, Gibbs Construction, Cameron Chiropractic, Wow Factor Auto Detailing, TMS Diesel with 3 locations. Momentum Massage, Nostos MMA, and Powell House Management. Thank you guys. All my training partners, you guys make me better every day, and I couldn't be here without you guys. So thank you.
Well, sounds great, and we appreciate you coming on. Make sure you tune in to Cage Titans. It's a fight you do not want to miss.